Griffith's.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate your responses to the previous questions, particularly that you'll get back with some information, but not a specific answer based on the legalities of everything. That being said, I also appreciate your answers previously in relationship to the opioid crisis, which is important to so many of us, and I think that my colleagues have covered that extensively, so I'm going to move on to some other things, but appreciate working with you on that in the future. I've got a number of things that I'm passionate about and that affect my district. One is I have a very rural district in the southwest corner of Virginia, and I want to ask you about telehealth because it seems to me that we have some issues there with reimbursement. And if a doctor is willing to conduct a telehealth consult, I believe they should not be prevented or discouraged from providing the service because of outdated reimbursement policies. And I would like to work with you and HHS to help find ways to alleviate reimbursement challenges that are in the way of telehealth exploding and bringing medicine to the nooks and crannies of every part of America. So what policies are you all working on to facilitate the delivery of telehealth, and what policies do we need to change? And I know you may not have an answer after only 2 weeks, but please let us know. What do we need to change to help you all allow reimbursement for telehealth services so that people can get services all over the country in all predominantly rural areas, but I can see applications in other areas as well?
Thank you for raising that issue. I am a big supporter of telehealth and how we can harness that, especially for underserved areas like our rural communities. I do suspect there's significant statutory barriers around reimbursement there, given that most of our constructs were set up in the 1960s for our payment regimes. So would love to work with you on that as I go back and we plow through and identify those barriers to see where we might be able to make changes. I believe in the budget we have one provision that we are recommending regarding Medicare Advantage plans, I think, and supporting greater payment flexibility around telehealth, but I'm sure there are many, many more. But I'm a big believer in the opportunities that we have there.
I don't think it's a partisan issue. I think you'd find support on both sides of the aisle to change the laws that are keeping you all from doing things that we all want you to do. So I appreciate that in relationship to telehealth. Let's talk about neonatal abstinence syndrome. I'm encouraged to see that CMS use state plan authority as it did in the case of West Virginia this week with respect to the state's request to allow its Medicaid program to reimburse certain treatment centers that take care of infants with neonatal abstinence syndrome. This move suggests that CMS and the states can work together to address the distinct needs of each state. If my home state of Virginia or my neighboring state of Tennessee or other states should choose to follow suit and request coverage of similar services through a state plan amendment or waiver, may I get your commitment that your staff at HHS and CMS will work swiftly to allow such a waiver so that we can ensure infants with NAS in Medicaid get the care that they need?
I don't know the particulars on that approval, but we certainly will work with any state that is going to be delivering care in that area within the confines of our waiver and demonstration authority, and we'll do that as swiftly as we possibly can. That seems a quite noble
All right, now here's one more I'm going to push you on. Durable medical equipment. I know that there have been some issues, but for rural areas, the competitive bid reimbursement adjustment has been deadly for durable medical equipment suppliers. Folks are having, I've got one fellow in particular, he's driving through, up and down mountains to deliver oxygen, et cetera, to people that he considers friends and clients. He keeps having to lay people off just to make ends meet. So I ask you, there's an interim final rule that's pending at OMB. I've spoken with OMB and Mr. Mulvaney about that. Will you commit to working with Director Mulvaney to ensure this IFR is released expeditiously? It's currently sitting in your hands.
So I can't speak to that particular IFR or that issue because I do believe that's a matter pending in litigation. But I will tell you our budget, I'm very concerned about the issue of DME, the competitive DME and rural access. And our budget proposal actually has some, I think, very important reforms and suggestions for rural access there in it.
And I appreciate that because I will tell you that it won't be a whole lot of months before he just has to completely shut down his operation, and then I will have constituents who are no longer being served because, when you're a long way from the nearest town, it's hard to drive down there and get your own equipment, drive it back up the mountain.
Would gentleman yield a second?
I yield.
Yeah, I just want to double down on that because I'm finding the same thing in rural parts of my district where all of a sudden on Burns, Oregon, long way away. Getting access to DME, durable medical equipment's a real problem. Oxygen's becoming a real problem. And this is something that I hope the administration will act on expeditiously as well. So I'm glad you raised that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Chair, thanks.